living with spinal fractures.
If you've recently been diagnosed with a spinal fracture, you may be experiencing a range of different feelings and concerns. In this video, we discuss some of the emotional and physical effects of living with spinal fractures. We'll also let you know how you can get further information and support.
Your thoughts and feelings.
People react to being diagnosed with spinal fractures in different ways. You might feel a whole range of emotions: shock, fear, betrayal that your body has let you down, anger, grief, loss of control or uncertainty. Or you may have none of these feelings and be taking things in your stride. It's okay however you're feeling, but it's also important to work through any feelings and, over time, learn to accept what has happened to your body. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up though. While you may not be able to do everything in quite the same way as before, try to focus on what you can still do. You may find that by making small changes, you can still do many of the activities you used to enjoy.
When I first broke my vertebra, I don't even think I felt particular shock or betrayal. I just felt this isn't my body anymore, what's happening to me. And it took quite a while to be told what had happened to me. And in that time, all I could feel was, I want to try and be who I was. I want to feel like I used to feel.
When my doctor phoned me and said, look, we've seen the MRI scans and it's osteoporosis, I went into total shock. In my mind's eye, I'd immediately put myself into a wheelchair. And to be honest with you, I didn't know a great deal about osteoporosis. So I became very, very frightened because I didn't understand what the future looked like for me.
I do have fear of injuring myself again or of something even worse happening. And I had that before I fractured my spine because I'd fractured other bones. It's easy to kind of feel that you don't want to do anything. And then at the same time, that really makes your quality of life a lot less good.
Once you hear the diagnosis, then Professor Google kicks in big time as your best friend. And so I was really looking at all the information I could possibly get my hands on to understand what that diagnosis meant. And it was only in doing that research that I realised that until I had been offered the medication, prescribed the medication by the doctor, I was at risk of, of further fractures.
I started sleeping a lot worse over the past 2 or 3 years, where my problems with my bones have gotten worse. And of course, if you wake up in pain at the night, in the night, the night time is always the time where all your worst fears and thoughts come. The thing I'm most afraid of is that I won't be able to manage on my own. And I know I am on my own. I'm going to be on my own. I don't want to be a burden to my children. I don't want to be the person they worry about and have to come home and check on, I don't want to have the alarm button in my house yet. I've done all that for my parents. I know it really well. And so that's the thing that I fear most because I know it too well.
All of a sudden, your day-to-day world changes. So all the activities that you could do, you can't do anymore. Sharing the cooking, being able to cook. I couldn't cook because I couldn't stand up for long enough to be able to do that. So that was a big blow. Big gardener, couldn't do my gardening anymore. So that had a big emotional impact on me. I couldn't watch Garden as well because I used to get so upset because I knew I couldn't do the gardening anymore. So it really does have a huge emotional effect. And the only thing I'll say is that I learned very quickly to concentrate on what I could do and the little steps I was making towards improving, rather than concentrating on the things that I couldn't do anymore, because I think that's the road to a really, really serious case of depression if you're not careful. But I was determined that I was going to try, wherever possible, to put kind of a positive spin on the whole thing.
It is scary to think about my body changing shape. But I also know that there's lots of people whose body has changed and who have curved spines and, they're okay. They might be sometimes unhappy or sad or in pain, but they're still living a worthwhile life. So I don't think my life won't be worthwhile. I'm just afraid of the pain. When I had children, I didn't feel that I wanted my body back, the one before having children, because I'd had a baby. So I feel the same about osteoporosis. I don't want my body back like it was before I had osteoporosis, because it's a different body now. So I think I feel okay about that.
When my consultant told me that over time my spine would strengthen through taking the medication, I could see a pathway to an improvement in my day-to-day life. And as that gradually improved, then I felt more confident doing a lot more day-to-day things, not to the level that I was doing them before. But once you've worked through the pain of the fractures, and once the fractures start to heal, that's one milestone. Then having been on the medication, and that's the next milestone. And over time, even if it's tiny, tiny steps, that gradual improvement then gives you confidence and gives you hope that whilst you might not get back to normality as you knew it before, there is a new normal for you, and you work towards the acceptance of that new normal.
I think the difficult thing about any kind of suffering is that it tends to be quiet, and you feel things inside you that you don't even want to acknowledge to yourself. And that makes it difficult to talk about. And at the same time, if you don't talk about it, it compounds feeling bad and it compounds the pain.
In the early stages, I did think about what the future looked like. I think the important thing to remember is somebody else's experience is not the experience that you're necessarily going to have. Originally, I did think there was a future where I wasn't going to be able to do anything. But as I learned more about what would happen after medication and talking to my specialist, I realised that actually I could get back to doing pretty much anything that I wanted to do within the confines of what my back would allow me to do. So I don't fear the future at all now.
It is important to talk about it and to try and escape that sort of silent suffering, which is just I think a lot of people have that because it's very natural, because you feel protective of yourself and you don't want to admit to anybody how awful you feel. And you think, well, that's just going to burden them and no one's going to want to spend time with me if I moan all the time. But at the same time, that's what the nice thing about support groups and things like that is that the ROS offers, because it's really helpful to have places where you can share those thoughts.
Sometimes if we're kind of be-strong people, we tend not to reach out because we think we can do everything ourselves. But I certainly learned to ask for help, whether or not it was from the ROS nurses helpline, which were just amazing. They were always on the end of the phone, even if it's just sometimes because you need to hear a reassuring message rather than somebody that's explaining to you medically what you should be doing. It really is. And also, there are support groups across the country and the ROS support groups. So to be able to speak and engage with people who have had similar experiences to you is really, really helpful.
Living with pain. Spinal fractures can be painful whilst you're healing, and for some people this pain can continue long after the initial fracture is healed. This is because the spine doesn't always heal in the correct shape. A spinal fracture happens when bones in your spine become weak and squash down on themselves. The bones heal in this new shape, so you may have ongoing pain. For example, you may get nerve pain if the spinal fracture pinches or irritates a nerve as it heals. All the nerves in the area may become overly sensitive and continue to fire off pain signals even after the bone is healed. Some people get muscle spasms when they move, caused by the muscles in the back being stretched or shortened due to the change in the shape of the spine. In other people, the changes in the spine put strain on the joints and ligaments between the spinal bones, causing them to become painful.
I'm learning to distinguish the pain between osteoporosis and the menopause aches. I think in the beginning, I thought that all my pains were to do with my fractured spine, because I sort of thought everything's broken now and I hurt everywhere. And it took me a couple of months to realize that really this hurting ankle or this hurting hand does not have to do with your spinal fracture.
The physical pain is easier to deal with in a way because it's something that you are genuinely feeling and you can gauge it on a scale of 1 to 10. With emotional pain, that's far more difficult to pinpoint, particularly if you're a person that isn't used to having anxiety or feelings of vulnerability. I make it sound easy. It isn't easy. And for different people, those difficulties are, it can be less or can be greater. But it is something that you have to work quite hard on. And I will say to everybody as a piece of advice, talk about how you're feeling. Always talk about how you're feeling. And if you can't talk to your partner or your husband or your wife or your family, then speak with the nurse helpline at the ROS, because they do listen and they can give you reassurance around how you're feeling emotionally. Different people have different pain thresholds anyway, so my level of pain might be a bit more severe for somebody else. Somebody else's level of pain might feel, less for me. But definitely it's about pain management and taking drugs to control the pain. The medication takes 2 strands really, the pain management medication and then the medication that you're prescribed by your doctor or specialist to actually help with the osteoporosis.
I don't know if there's a sort of standard reaction to medication. I think it would have been very helpful for me to have spoken to someone at the Royal Osteoporosis Society about the effects of these medications. I think the good thing about talking to one of the specialist nurses is that you have more time and they give you more time and you can kind of give a more rounded picture and you probably feel more confident about telling them private things because you don't feel maybe so judged.
If you have any questions about spinal fractures, the ROS helpline is here for you.
Please remember that we're here from Mondays through to Fridays if you have any questions or issues that you'd like to discuss with us as a result of watching this video. Calls to our helpline are free and are confidential, and no question is too small. You can also visit our website to find out more about the subjects we've covered, plus a lot more besides. We have a network of support groups across the UK, led by volunteers for the benefit of people living with osteoporosis and broken bones. To find out more, please visit the support group pages of our website. Please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.